The Union, directed by Julian Farino, stars Mark Wahlberg, Halle Berry, and J.K. Simmons. A New Jersey construction worker goes from regular guy to aspiring spy when his long-lost high school sweetheart recruits him for an espionage mission. The main reason I wanted to check this one out was due to the fact that it's currently, at the time of me recording this, the #1 film on Netflix in my country, and as we know, having a movie as #1 on Netflix basically deems nothing on the movie's quality. The site will just mad promote it, so that it's the first thing you see going on to the site, and despite me knowing this, I was still curious enough to see what this had to offer. I'll firstly start with the performances, mainly from the man himself, Mark Wahlberg. His entire performance in this is simply subpar, although there are occasions where he borders into his happening style of acting when it comes to the odd line delivery. It always comes across as pretty jarring, and along with this was bad at times too. I will say there's an initial intrigue with his character that the movie never decides to delve into deeper. His character has been tied down to his childhood city his whole life, and he loves it almost to the point where he, nearly to a sad degree, still acts like he's on the edge of his teenage years. And there's an aspect here commentating on adult guys who cling to the past, trying to stay in their glory years. He even wears his iconic snapback cap in the first half of this movie, but unfortunately the movie never decides to delve into this part of the guy's psyche on a much deeper level than this, which is fine, because that's not the type of movie that would do something like that. But throughout the rest of the runtime, he doesn't bring anything too amazing to this role. It's pretty standard, and basically it's just a very subpar performance from him. Halle Berry plays Wahlberg's high school sweetheart turned super spy working for the Union, the name of the spy organization in this movie, and she does her best to try and carry the movie. It is a weird pairing to have Wahlberg and Berry romantically involved, but she alone manages to make this chemistry work to some extent. There's times where it can be believable, but it's really just down on her part, so I have to commend her for basically pulling all of the weight in that regard. When it comes to her action scenes, she pulls them off well and makes those a lot more believable, to where you can be engrossed in her doing all of these things. She did pretty okay here. J.K. Simmons unfortunately feels pretty underutilized in this movie. He may be a secondary character, but they don't make the guy do all that much, showcasing such a waste of such good talent here. But the times he is on screen, it made most of the scenes better, and on the odd occasion he would also deliver a line that in a way would make me close to smile, which can't really be said for most of the other actors in this. I just wish they gave the guy a little more screen time. The best way I can describe the plot of this movie is just very generic and derivative. We've seen this type of story done to death, where some average Joe gets in over its head and some action shenanigans happen, and this movie just wants to be another one thrown into the subgenre without adding anything new and unique to it, which for most of the runtime ultimately makes for a pretty boring watch. It holds nothing of real substance, which I'm not disappointed by. I knew going into it was going to be like this, so I can't complain there. It's also just very lifeless. It almost felt like the movie was made out of a contractual obligation with how by the numbers and formulaic this whole thing is. As I was watching it, I had to really try hard to focus on it, but it is really just one of these movies that will go in one ear and after the other. I feel like there was a lot of wasted opportunity with Wahlberg's character, as the whole point of bringing him in to do this job is basically he just has this average life and job in construction. It makes his skills in the field more valuable, I suppose. They mention him being calm and collected, chilling on railings, which does come back into things later, only once in the action scene later on in the movie. And as I was watching this, I wish they would have done this more in these types of scenes, as it would have seemed a bit more realistic and added a stronger case as to why Wahlberg's character is chosen to be the lead of this in the first place. The editing in this movie isn't too great either, which was embarrassing to see. There's a moment that's supposed to be a tense scene, but if you pay close attention, you can see between both takes, Wahlberg's head placement doesn't match. In one shot, he's meant to be looking and talking to Halle Berry, and then it will immediately cut to another shot where he's looking in nearly a completely opposite direction, which was really jarring to see and laughable too. Outside of some pretty good licensed songs, the overall soundtrack in this is pretty forgettable and incredibly generic. Whenever the main score kicks into this movie, while it may suit the scenes they're in, you could also interchange him with literally any other royalty-free stock action music, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. It really is interchangeable, and it just felt ultimately really uninspired. The cinematography is mostly very bland to look at. I think I counted a total of one shot that actually looked decent, as it had to do with silhouettes, and the lighting and the contrast of it looked pretty decent. It felt like they put a little bit more effort into this shot than they did with the majority of all the other shots in this movie, so it was appreciated to see. But other than that, everything else is just pretty standard. There's nothing impressive going on here, and it holds an incredible amount of lack of trying. Overall, this isn't a terrible movie, I'll give it that, but it's not great either. If you're a fan of the action genre, it's something that will satisfy your itch for a new movie to look at. Just don't expect anything too groundbreaking. The movie is nothing more than just another poster to add into the database of Netflix's library, and rather than it feeling like something made by a passionate filmmaker, it reads like a movie that was thought up by a board meeting by a bunch of producers. I'm giving The Union 2 stars. This is a pretty standard, run-of-the-mill, lazy, and generic flick that leaves so much to be desired. It's another movie to add to the slew of pretty bad movies in Wahlberg's own filmography, which seems to just keep growing as it goes on for the past decade. If you watch it, it won't leave a lasting impression at all, and you'll forget about it in less than a day.